Chapter 7. Osiris and Seth. Owen was reading a book about Egyptian gods. It said that Osiris, the one who judges those who die, was once a king. His brother Seth wanted to be king, so he played a trick on Osiris. He brought him a beautiful, large chest, and he told the king that he could have the chest if he could fit inside it. After the king lay down in the chest, Seth quickly closed it, threw it into the Nile River, and it sailed out to sea. Owen put the book down because he began thinking of his own father's death. His father had been killed at an archaeological site. He was a famous archaeologist, which is why Owen wanted to be one. Owen's uncle was with Owen's father when he died. He came to live with Owen and his mother afterwards, and Owen had always thought his uncle didn't care about his father's death. He never talked about him, and he behaved as if he were Owen's father. The voice he heard at the professor's suddenly meant something to him. He felt he had to talk to Monica. He remembered where she lived, because he had driven her home from the professor's. He hoped she wasn't asleep. Monica was asleep when she heard the loud knocking at her door. It frightened her.
Who is it?
It's me, Owen. Could you open the door? I have to talk to you.
Owen looked awful. He held his books tightly in his arms, and his hair stood up on his head as if he had been pulling at it.
Can I come in? I've got something really important to talk to you about.
Yes, come in, but calm down.
Monica made them some hot chocolate, while Owen told her what he had read.
I still don't understand what that story has to do with your uncle.
That was my uncle's voice we heard at Professor Lloyd's. I know it's wrong, but I always thought my uncle had something to do with my father's death. He never talked about it.
But that has nothing to do with the scarab.
It does. Don't you remember Professor Lloyd telling us about the markings on the back?
Yes.
Well, one of those marks was the ram's horn. It's the sign of water, which connects all the other signs. Osiris was killed by water. He looks after the dead. That's why there are the markings of the dog's teeth.
And the hawk's wing?
Osiris's son, Horus, killed his uncle for his father. When Horus died, he became the hawk god who sits by his father when he judges the dead and cries for them.
Monica touched the scarab around her neck. She knew that she and Owen had been brought together for some reason. Maybe she could do something for him. Owen was holding his cup of hot chocolate, thinking very hard. Finally, he spoke.
I think I should go and talk to my uncle.
He would probably like that.
I haven't spoken to him in 5 years.
Would you like me to go with you?
He looked at Monica.
Yes.
Chapter 8. The Gloves. Owen's uncle was painting the front of his house when Monica and Owen drove up the dirt road. He pushed back his cap to get a better look, and seemed very surprised when he saw who it was. Owen held out his hand.
Hello, Uncle Bob.
They shook hands, then hugged.
You're the last person in the world I expected to see coming up that road today.
Well, I thought it was time I paid a visit to say hello.
Uncle Bob's blue eyes were bright with happiness as he looked into his nephew's eyes. He looked over at Monica.
I'm sorry. This is my friend Monica.
How do you do?
Nice to meet you, sir.
They all went and sat on the back porch, which looked onto a huge empty field surrounded by trees. Uncle Bob brought them some lemonade. A large, friendly dog lay next to Monica's chair, and she lightly scratched its head.
Do you two mind if I take a walk with my new friend here?
The men didn't answer. So Monica ran down the porch steps into the field, with the dog following her.
Uncle Bob, what happened the day my father died?
His uncle stopped talking and looked at the long, empty field in front of him. Monica had disappeared somewhere with the dog.
We never really talked about that, did we? But maybe it's time.
I never understood why you never mentioned his name after he died.
His uncle looked over at him.
Owen, some things hurt too much to talk about.
Do you think you could talk about it now?
I could try. You see, there was this big earthquake 2 days before we went down in the tunnel. I told your father there would be another one, but
His uncle was having trouble telling this part.
But he wouldn't listen. It was our last day, and he wanted to go. When it hit, I was up above, cleaning some of the pieces we'd found.
Owen could see it happening. He didn't even notice that his uncle had got up to go inside. He heard the back door open, and then he saw his uncle standing next to him, holding an old pair of gloves.
Your father gave these to me the day he died, because I had left mine at home. He wore them every time he went out to dig. I think he'd have wanted you to have them.
Owen held the gloves in his hands. He put them on. There were tears in his eyes. His uncle put his arm around him. Soon after Monica returned from her walk, she and Owen got ready to leave. They promised Uncle Bob they would come back again soon. As they drove away, Monica beeped the horn twice. In the car, Owen was quiet. Monica saw the gloves in his hand, but she didn't ask him about them. That was between Owen, his uncle, and his father. Chapter 9. The Cemetery. After leaving Owen's uncle, Monica did something Owen didn't expect. She drove the car into a cemetery.
Where are we going?
My parents were buried here. I want to see their gravestones.
They parked the car in the visitors' car park, then walked. The sun was very bright. They were walking through a field of white crosses and gravestones. They stopped to look at some of the older ones.
Look at this one, 1826.
And this one is from 1905. Michael Mason. Look, his wife died a year later.
I think I like archaeology because of the connection between two periods of time. I mean, when I understand the way someone lived hundreds of years ago, I understand more about the way we live now.
Monica took Owen's hand and walked with him to her parents' graves.
They were never buried here. We just have the graves to remember them. They died at sea. Their bodies were never found.
Monica took a jar of water from her coat pocket. She poured some of it over each of her parents' gravestones.
What's that?
It's water I took from the sea. I was at my parents' funeral, but I never felt like I said goodbye. This is something I thought of doing to let them know that everything is okay.
Was there a problem between you and your parents?
Well, my father loved our family holidays. The summer they died was the first time I hadn't gone with them. Some friends of mine had a beach house. I was 18. I wanted to be with my friends. My dad and I had a big fight. We didn't talk to each other before he left on their boat trip. I felt guilty about that. In fact, I never forgave myself until I began to believe in this scarab.
She touched the stone on her neck.
You think your father will somehow feel that your argument meant nothing compared to how much you loved each other?
Something like that. All the things I've seen and heard since I got the scarab have given me hope. I would like to believe that I live a better life now because of the good things done by the people who lived before me. It does justify their life. If what the ancient Egyptians said was true, I mean the fact that people's lives are judged after they die, then I believe it's our duty to show the gods that those who died did help us by their good actions. It's a good reason to do the best you can.
As Owen and Monica walked back to the car in the bright golden sunlight, they looked like two dark figures slowly disappearing into the distance. Chapter 10. The Blue Scarab. Monica was sitting in the living room of Owen's flat, waiting for him. He had gone to use a neighbor's telephone because his was out of order. She found a book on the table next to her. It was a library book on ancient Egypt. She opened it to the story of Osiris and began to read.
After Seth had thrown the chest with Osiris inside into the Nile, Osiris's wife Isis went to look for it. She found the chest, but before she could open it and bury the body, Seth stole it from her. He cut the body into 16 separate pieces and hid them all over Egypt. Again Isis went to look for them. This time she took her sister Nephthys with her. Together they found each piece. Isis had magical powers. She put the body back together with a special oil.
This oil is from the tree of healing. It will keep the body after it is buried. This white cloth that I will put around him will let the gods know that he was a great king.
The gods liked what Isis had done, and they rewarded Osiris.
Osiris will decide on the life of the dead. If someone is good and just, they will be rewarded. Those who are evil and do not respect others' lives will be punished.
So Osiris was made the judge of the dead. When somebody died, their soul, which left their body, was put through 42 tests. After these tests, the soul was brought before Osiris. Osiris sat in front of a pair of scales. He held a feather in his hand. Next to him, there was a man with a dog's head and a man with the head of a falcon. Osiris held the feather out to the dog's head.
Anubis, take this feather and place it on one end of the scale. It is the feather of truth. It will tell us who has lived a just life and who has not.
Osiris then spoke to the falcon head.
Horus, you are my son. You tried to find revenge for my death by killing your uncle. Take the soul and put it on the opposite end of the scale. There you will cry for its revenge.
The falcon head walked to the scale opposite the dog's head. They held each scale until Osiris told them to let them go.
This soul has passed through the 42 tests. These tests were given to decide if your good deeds in life are greater than your bad ones. You have not passed these tests alone. People who are living have acted for you. Now it is time to see. Have you lived a good and just life? Let go of the scales.
The falcon and dog let go of the scales. The falcon made a loud cry. The scales balanced. Osiris held up the blue scarab.
This is what we will use to speak to the living. Through this, the souls of the dead will be judged. We hope that the living will understand what we say.
Now I understand.
Monica closed the book and put it back on the table. She walked to the window and looked outside. Everything was bathed in the sunlight. She touched the scarab round her neck and closed her eyes. She said to herself softly,
Now I understand.